Welcome to this author's interview series. My name is Christina Theodoraki. I'm editor of Small Business Economics and Entrepreneurship Journal, and I have the great honor to interview today Holger Patzelt from Technical University of Munich. Welcome, Holger. I would like to thank you for accepting to participate to this interview series, but also to share your insight with us and with our readers today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be part of this interview. I'm looking forward to your questions.
So Holger is going to give us more insight in his paper entitled A Fatigue Model of Social Venturing. This paper is published in Small Business Economics in January 2024, and this paper is co-authored with Tim Shepard from University of Notre Dame. So we're going to start my first question. Could you tell us, please, what is this paper about?
Yeah, so this paper is about basically an observation that we made during a number of field studies for other projects. And that is that this typical portrayal of social entrepreneurship being great because it helps people and great because the entrepreneurs always feel good when they help others is actually not necessarily true. So what we observed is that quite a number of the entrepreneurs that we interviewed and accompanied for quite a while, they had hard times, and some of them had very hard times, so hard that they actually did not find any motivation to go back to the venture and continue with their helping activities. And to us, this looked like they're really like kind of permanently exhausted. It's not like a small dip in motivation. It's really a permanent exhaustion and like this feeling of having no energy for this helping activities anymore. And then when we look into the literature, we found that this is actually described as compassion fatigue, which is experienced by, for example, nurses or social workers. So particularly in work where you feel a lot with others, it seems to be very exhausting sometimes, and that's what we observed, and this triggered our interest in studying what we call then specifically social venturing fatigue, meaning why and how entrepreneurs become exhausted with their social venturing activities, and in the end then don't have the energy anymore to continue with it and perhaps even exit it.
It's extremely important what you say, and actually until now we have been seeing social entrepreneurship as a popular and very bright concept, and actually you stresses the importance also to understand, to be critical also, and understand all these challenges that we may find behind, but also sometimes the dark side of social entrepreneurship. And actually you have partially also responded to my next question, but I would like to stress it and also ask you why this article is important and what we learn from this paper that we didn't know before.
Yeah, so I mean, summarizing, I believe one of the key messages and one of the first contributions is that, as you said, we actually shed a bit light on the potential dark side for entrepreneurs. So it's not always rosy and great to be a social entrepreneur. But I think our paper, beyond establishing this notion, goes into more tangible aspects of it. So, for instance, what we theorize in the paper, and it's a theoretical paper, so it's not empirically based. It is based on our personal observations that we had before, partly at least, and then also informed by the literature, of course. But what we theorize in the paper is, for example, that entrepreneurs can build up psychosocial resources that actually help them avoid getting entrepreneurial or social venturing fatigue from investing high amounts of effort into their ventures. And those social resources are, for example, like the passion they have for helping others, or for the venture more specifically, it's this feeling of autonomy that many entrepreneurs have and also social entrepreneurs experience, so to organize their work as they want it. It is also the social support that they get from their personal environment, also from like the volunteers and employees that surround them and create this positive spirit that you can observe when social ventures are founded. Or it is also something that is called like self-compassion. So being compassionate not only with others, but also with yourself if things don't really go as you believe they should go. And I think these are important insights that actually entrepreneurs can do something about or against entering into social venturing fatigue by building up these resources. Finally, we also found in our theoretical model that there's actually a bit of an endogenous resources development, because on the one hand, social entrepreneurship can also be a source of the resource. So if I love my venture, then I'm passionate about it, yeah. And then, but at the same time, this also again prevents me from working from high effort I put in the venture, then ending in fatigue. So it's a complex relationship with those resources. And then there's perhaps two more contributions to mention. The one is it's all dynamic, so we don't have like a snapshot in the theorizing, but we say, well, if people are pro-socially motivated and then they invest effort in their ventures and then fatigue develops, what can also happen is that, well, if the fatigue develops, I'm less motivated to and put less effort again in my venture. So it's really kind of this feedback model, and this also explains then why not only people are different in their motivation and social venturing efforts, but also why it changes over time, why it might change over time. And then finally, talking about people being so fatigued that they can't really continue anymore, this is also an explanation for exits. So usually the exit literature is a lot about failure of commercial ventures, or not only failure, but also like exiting in the form of initial public offerings or trade sales or whatever. But in social entrepreneurship, we don't really know much about it. And one factor that seems to drive this exit of social entrepreneurs is or can be fatigue.
Excellent. Actually, let me take the opportunity to have you here and you talk about social entrepreneurship, because last week I was invited in a European Social Entrepreneurship Educators Forum, and we had all this discussion about how we define social entrepreneurship, and we had a very challenging discussion about how it will flourish social entrepreneurship and the need of a commonly accepted definition. So let me, and I should have probably asked you first question this in the beginning, this question: how do you define social entrepreneurs in your paper and social entrepreneurs?
Social entrepreneurship in general, in our understanding, is founding and running a venture that has a primary social motive, but also has a financial element. So if it was only social, then it would more be like a non-for-profit venture, right? So this dual logic is something that characterizes social ventures in our understanding, and the social aspect needs to be really substantial and part of the mission. So it's not like a firm giving a bit of their profits into corporate social responsibility activities. That would not be social entrepreneurship. It's a part of the mission.
Excellent. Thank you very much for contributing in this definition. And I think we should be extremely how we define and how we're trying to measure to make any difference between already established concepts. To provide the new insights on these very specific types of entrepreneurs and companies. So let me take you in the beginning of this paper, this Eureka moment. What made you to wanted to jump in this dark side of social entrepreneurship, the fatigue, to explore all these dynamics and these mechanisms? How did this idea emerge of this research?
Yeah, it did emerge from a mixture of the observations that we made in other projects. For instance, in one project, we followed social ventures in the Munich area that emerged during the refugee crisis in the 2015 and 16s. And what happened is that lots of refugees at once came to Munich and had no shelter and no food and no clothes and so on. So the social ventures emerged during that time, and we observed them for quite a while, and then published other papers. But then over time, when we followed them up, we saw exactly that's what we describe in the paper, namely that some of the entrepreneurs just didn't have the energy anymore to continue with those activities. They also then faced like less support from the society, so it became more stressful, and that then together with us starting reading the literature and looking into these other social occupations, and there's lots of on social compassion fatigue of social workers in the literature, that then created the impression that, well, maybe we challenge an important assumption here and provide an important piece of research showing that it's not only good to be a social entrepreneur.
So actually in research, we say that papers, impactful papers, they open discussions, advance discussion with new versions and new updates, and others that close the discussion. So actually, if I understand well, we are here in the middle. You had the previous research that drive you to have today this paper and highlight this element, the fatigue of social entrepreneurship. And now I would like to ask you a question related to the future. What do you see the topic going forward? What is the next directions? What were your limit of research that probably you couldn't fulfill and you would like to see fulfilled by future research, or what probably other projects you are working on and you want to see this topic going forward?
So, I mean, one future research is one stream of future research is obvious because it's all a theoretical paper, so it needs further conceptualization and it needs empirical testing then of this detailed operationalization of variables. So, I mean, that's great. That would be great if people had like longitudinal data on social ventures and the exit conditions, and I think this could be a really great contribution. A second stream probably is that because I described you these factors that can prevent entrepreneurial fatigue, these psychosocial resources in terms of passion, autonomy, social support, and self-compassion. But I assume that there's also others. So there's not a good reason to say those are the only ones. I think there's quite a bit of other candidates that come up. So, for instance, how about like financial or reputational rewards that entrepreneurs gain from their venturing experiences? So, if they have a standing in the community, if they are attributed by newspapers as being an important person helping others, how does that then impact their tendency to develop fatigue? It could be even quicker, yeah, because it's the strain from being a public person, but it could also be that they gain more energy out of this reputational rewards. Then there's other constructs that are close to this self-compassion, so self-kindness or common humanity, mindfulness. These are all constructs that may play a role. And then, of course, like social support, we treat social support just as like one source of support, but support can come from so many different sources. It can come from co-workers, it can come from the media for social entrepreneurs, it can come from family, it can come from co-founders, it can come from peers. So, and it's not obvious that those would all be and have the same effects, because of course the nature of how I receive social and accept social support depends on the relationship I have to the people before. So I think there's plenty of opportunities to work on this aspect. And then one aspect that we have in the model that we have only in a very important but still very underdeveloped way incorporated is the targets. So the people who are being helped. And in our model, it's only about the type of feedback, positive or negative, that I get from the targets and how that impacts fatigue development. But of course, this is there's lots of different ways how these targets could behave, could accept the help, the content of the feedback could play a role. So we think with this framework that we deliver, you can branch out at almost every part to build on the ideas of it.
Excellent. Can you tell us how this model can be useful for theory and practice, how we can implement it, and probably what would be the advice? For example, you're saying researchers that could provide some empirical data in different contexts. What would be your advices, but not only for researchers, but for also practitioners or policymakers, how this model could be useful when we want to engage in enabling social entrepreneurship?
Mm-hmm. I think for practitioners, it does have implications because they can actually support the building up of those psychosocial resources that I mentioned. So, for instance, professional networks, can provide social support, and entrepreneurship advisors, or also we as entrepreneurship teachers. When we teach those entrepreneurship courses, we can emphasize and perhaps even facilitate this building of social networks, and how important it is not only to acquire finance or to acquire physical resources, but also to get the support later on for avoiding fatigue. Also in incubation programs, for instance, so that could be really incorporated into the managing and the provision of information and teaching of the companies. Self-compassion, as another example, can be really trained by mindfulness exercises, for instance, like loving kindness meditation and others. So this can also be an element of educating and mentoring social entrepreneurs throughout their entire venture. And then finally, this role of feedback from targets that I mentioned. So I think our basic message is, if I summarize, is that positive feedback is actually good for avoiding fatigue, and negative feedback is actually less good for avoiding fatigue. But these are also elements that can go into how entrepreneurs cope with fatigue and how we tell them to cope with fatigue as educators. So celebrate positive feedback, right? I mean, that would be something to make it more salient, to really get the energy from that. And then, of course, if I get negative feedback, mastery orientation is, for instance, something that can be trained, that it helps people to deal with setbacks. So we think that those elements of the model can really put into tangible advice for social entrepreneurs that comes from mentors, educators, people running incubation programs, and network partners.
I would like to thank you very, very much for contributing to the journal, for choosing also small business economics for your article contribution and publication. This is actually what we are looking as a journal and as editorial board, is to identify articles that have things to say and have also models that advance the research discussion in entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of directions and avenues that we are still need research on. Social entrepreneurship has been extremely popular, but it's also extremely interesting to have this critical view, to have not only the bright side, but also see what the undergoing dark side behind different concepts. And I would like to thank you very much for contributing to the scholarly discussion. I would like also to see, yes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Yeah, it was really a pleasure. I mean, we had a great review process, a great editor. So I think the journal is doing a great job, and also promoting this type of research that hopefully then triggers an entire cascade of future work.
Actually, this is also very true to know that sometimes we have some myths related to journals saying that we only focus on empirical research, but actually research and what we're trying also to publish is not only empirical, but also conceptual papers that provide a new perspective, new modelings, and provide another era of reflection and invite future research on directions to provide empirical data. So sometimes, for example, we were thinking about if small business economics only publish empirical research on quantitative research. Of course, our goal is to publish rigorous research that advances entrepreneurship scholarly discussion. And so both conceptual, empirical, qualitative or quantitative papers are more than welcome. So I would like to conclude, to thank you for this inspiring knowledge and insights, for your contribution to the journal. I would like to encourage our readers to download your paper from which is available from the Springer website, but also congratulate you for this paper, which is great scholars contributing. You have been working with Dean Shepherd, and we have invited Dean Shepherd as an entrepreneurship thought leader to provide an interview also with his view for entrepreneurship and the future of the field. And you can also find this interview in the LinkedIn channel of Small Business Economics. Holger, thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Christina. It was a pleasure.